I recognize the member for Perth-Wellington.
Well, thank you, Speaker. It's truly an honour to pay tribute today to Hugh Edighoffer, someone who exemplified the very best of public service as MPP, as Speaker, and throughout his life. Who was Hugh Edighoffer? When he passed away in July 2019, we read a simple statement in Hugh's obituary that was characteristic of the man's decency and humility. Hugh was a small-town businessman, mayor, town councillor, member of provincial parliament, and Speaker of the Ontario Legislature. He was indeed those things, but to his family, friends, constituents, and colleagues in public service, and all those who knew him, he was much more. Hugh was a community builder. After graduating from college, Hugh returned to his hometown of Mitchell to work in the family business, in a retail clothing store his grandfather founded in 1924. With an early sense of public service, Hugh got involved in local service clubs, including the Lions Club and the Chamber of Commerce. In the 1950s and early 60s, Hugh's dedication to community led him to local politics. He held various municipal offices, including councillor and mayor of Mitchell. With his experience, it's probably not surprising that as an MPP, he supported community building projects. He knew their value. And that was my first experience with Hugh. I met him in the late 80s when I was on the building committee for the Moncton Arena, now called the Elma Logan Recreation Complex. We needed money to build it. These were the days before constituency offices, so we went to see Hugh at his home in Mitchell. He welcomed us, he heard us, and he acted. He delivered an astonishing $600,000 in funding. And when the project was complete, he added to the grand opening ceremony, bringing along another distinguished community builder, Lincoln Alexander, then the Lieutenant Governor of Ontario. Just as an aside on that, the day of the opening, Speaker, we lost Mr. Alexander. We couldn't find him. We had a secure room for him, and he wasn't there. So just before the ceremony was to start, his security guards started running around looking for him, and I was on my way to the men's washroom. I went into the washroom, and guess who was in there? Lincoln Alexander. And I said, "Sir, everybody's worried about your security and your safety, and your people are looking for you right now." And he looked at me and he said, "Oh, I don't think anybody's going to shoot me in Moncton," and nobody did. So we continued on with the ceremony. Years later, after I was first elected, I enjoyed sitting down to dinner with Hugh, and that's dinner at noon, with Hugh and the Mitchell Legion, at the Mitchell Legion on Fridays. He was always supportive and encouraging, and Hugh was determined. Hugh's determination is well known and well respected, but his election results over the years make it unmistakable. He first ran for a seat in the provincial legislature in 1963. Despite receiving nearly 40% of the votes, he was not successful. 4 years later, he tried again. His second attempt was a squeaker. He won the seat by only 184 votes. I know how that feels, Mr. Speaker. Having won an election, Hugh didn't rest. He worked hard for his constituents. Throughout the 70s, he won every election by a greater margin than the one before. By the election of 1977, Hugh won almost 70% of the votes in the riding of Perth, a plurality larger than any other in the province. Hugh easily won re-election again in 81, 85, and 1987. His progressive Conservative opponent in 1977 was Vivian Jarvis, who serves today in my constituency office. And before that election, Vivian visited Hugh and Nancy on their front porch. And she recalls telling Hugh, "I'm not running against you. I'm running because we don't have a candidate." Hugh was a statesman. It's been said correctly that Hugh elevated his constituents and public service over partisan politics or personal ambition. But he was always a proud Liberal and even served as chairman of the Liberal caucus. By 1985, Hugh had accumulated considerable knowledge about the workings of the legislature, having already served as Deputy Speaker in a minority parliament. That and a well-earned reputation for impartiality made him the obvious choice to serve as the new Speaker. In his book, Whose Servant I Am, Claire Dale writes, The man who many people felt was one of the most nonpartisan politicians at Queen's Park became the second Speaker of the Legislative Assembly to be elected from the ranks of the opposition. 2 weeks later, Frank Miller's government fell, and David Peterson became Premier. Dale goes on to write, "Impartiality became the watchword for Edighoffer's initial term as Speaker. His well-earned reputation for impartiality was tested, as Dale also notes, in a series of tough decisions as Speaker. He passed those tests, however, and in 1987 go on to become only the third person since the 19th century to have served more than one term as Speaker. Hugh was a constituency person. Though he may be remembered in the halls of Queen's Park as a statesman and a speaker to those of us in Perth County, his greatest legacy is one of his service to his constituents. They were the reason he ran. He was a humble, good-humored people person who cared about his community, and voters rewarded him for it. To this day, it's a story worth remembering, and it's an example worth emulating." Thank you, Speaker.